Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Caliban, and if I had to choose my pain, I'd pretend to be torn between Thomas Paine and Payne Stewart, but in my heart, I'd always want to choose Major Paine. I'm joined on the show, as usual, by Ella Pearson. She's the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast on the Chronic Rift Network, and she is the curator of the Generations Geek Instagram account. Ella, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you.
There is an agonizing wait every week once Discovery is aired until the next Sunday when Discovery is on again. What do you do to fill that time? Are you watching or rewatching any other Trek series?
Honestly, I want to say that I'm watching something really interesting and good, but I've just been binging New Girl, which is really interesting and good, but in a different way.
There has got to be a New Girl podcast out there for sure. I don't know anything about it, though, so I can't make a joke about it, really. Also joining us on the show tonight, he's the author of the young adult novels Samurai Shortstop, Code of Honor, and Project 1065, and he's a former guest on Enterprising Individuals. His latest novel, Refugee, and also his other novel, Ban This Book, can be found in bookstores and online. He's Alan Gratz. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
You're welcome back, and I should say that Alan is also the co-host of LCPOD, the internet's foremost TJ Hooker podcast.
That's right. Yeah, if you want to know all about T.J. Hooker, we're the people to come to right here.
It's serious business. Maybe we'll hear a little more from LCPOD in the future. Who can say?
Yeah, maybe.
Alan, most, if not all, of your novels are set in tumultuous historical periods, and they deal with social, often international issues. How do you go about deciding what to focus on when you write a book in terms of the issues involved?
Well, I write for kids, and so my main audience is middle schoolers. So I'm always looking for a story where I can get a kid as the protagonist, and that does limit the kind of stories I can tell. If I'm writing about World War II, I can write about a kid in the Resistance, or I can write about a kid in the Hitler Youth. It's harder to write a story about a bomber where they didn't have kids on bombers, or a submarine where there weren't kids on submarines.
True.
So that limits me a little bit, but otherwise. Unfortunately, there are plenty of times in our history where kids have been asked to do heroic, brave, dangerous things, where they've been asked to grow up and be mature before their time. And there are plenty of those stories to choose from, and those are the ones that I research and write about.
Yeah. How do you make the issues digestible for younger readers?
What I try and do is I try and keep it so that it's a page turner, so that they don't want to put the book down. But at the same time, I'm trying to put in all the stuff that really happened. I think kids, especially middle schoolers, really crave verisimilitude. I think that they have a really strong sense of justice. And so I think that when they see something done wrong to somebody, they want to see right done in return. They want to see, the bad guys get theirs in the end. Yeah. And boy, when you're writing about World War II, as I've had a number of times, you don't get a whole lot more bad than the Nazis. So, they're a really easy bad guy because they were super bad. And so I pick situations that are really black and white, but I also don't pull any punches when I describe what people were doing to each other. I think that's what kids really respond to.
Yeah. Trek historically has always been preoccupied with issues similar to the ones that you write about. I can't remember if we talked about it when you were on the show previously, but were you looking forward to Star Trek Discovery?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it. It was in the really far future, I think, by the time when we did ours. Yes. Any return to an episodic Trek, I am very much in favor of. We did talk about that briefly, I guess, that the one thing that we talked about the movies, and one of the things that, in the most recent Kelvinverse movie, at one point they've got Kirk saying, like, why don't we just go on missions anymore? And we were saying, like, yeah, that's our question too. Like, why can't we just go on missions anymore? Can we have a TV show, please?
Yeah.
So, really been looking forward to this one. I have a confession to make.
Sure.
So, you and I talked about me. This is one of my free days home. I've been on the road traveling, talking about my books in schools and conferences and festivals all fall.
Right.
And so this was like my one Sunday to be home and do this. And I said, oh yeah, I'll be watching the episodes on the road and I'll be ready for this. And cut to today, where I hadn't seen any of the episodes yet.
Oh, really?
And I binge watched the entire run and then tonight's episode just to prepare for
All right.
Discovery.
Then you're ready to talk about it. It's fresh for you.
I'm ready to talk about all of it.
Well, we all have, Ella and I, just this one, and you all of them, have watched.
Right, and I've listened to your previous broadcasts. They've been
Okay.
great, and they've helped me answer a lot of questions that I had about the show, too.
You're beefed up on it then. Well,
Yeah.
we've just watched episode 5 entitled Choose Your Pain, and we're here to break it down for the listeners. As always, we're setting a course for the spoiler zone, so be warned. If you're like Alan and you haven't quite, until this point, been able to see the episodes, we are going to spoil things, so spoilers are incoming. First of all, Alan, now that you have watched it, I'm intrigued to think or to find out what you thought about the premiere, the first 2 episodes.
So I treated it. I really see it as prologue. I agreed with your assessment after the 3rd episode in your podcast, where you where you'd said like this was really like the first real pilot episode was 3, and why didn't the show really start there? And look, as an author, I try not to write prologues. I want to reveal all that backstory through action in the moment. And I was really surprised that they chose to do those 2 pilot episodes as really the backstory for then bringing us up to speed in that 3rd episode, where the action of our story, with Michael on board the Discovery, that's what the show is named for after all,
right.
Really kicks in. And so, I mean, I thought that the episodes were good, but I really liked 3 on better. And I like one of your other guests, I really thought that maybe they could have started with 3 and woven that other information in later on. Yeah. I do have a pet theory, and we can get to this later. I know we want to talk about the episode first, but I have a pet theory about where they're going and why then the prologue, the pilot, is necessary for that. Okay. So I don't think they should have done it, but I have a guess as to why they did.
Okay. Well, put a pin in that, and we will come back to that at the end of the show. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Payne does get chosen this week, and of course the big story is the first appearance of fan favorite character Harcourt Fenton Harry Mudd, played by Rainn Wilson, of course originally played by Roger C. Carmel on the original series. What did you guys think about the first appearance of Harry Mudd and his depiction?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I love Rainn Wilson, and I really felt confident that he was going to do a great job, and I love it. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, ditto on the Rainn Wilson casting. I love him as an actor and was really excited, actually, when they cast him. I don't care that he doesn't look like the original actor. I think that he's got the right attitude, the right mentality. He's going to bring the right flair to that character.
He's certainly got enough rings.
Go ahead.
He's certainly got enough rings.
Yeah. Yeah. I did wonder, the show has been pretty dark up until now. And as soon as I found out that this week, the one where I'd be talking to you about it would be the one where we get Harry Mudd, I was like, how in the world, now knowing the show through 4 episodes, are they possibly going to bring Mudd in any, like, this is like one of the most screwball characters from the original series, maybe the most screwball. Like, that totally doesn't jive with the show that we've got going on right now. And in fact, he's not as funny right now in this episode. There are moments of humor, certainly. Yeah. But they gave us a little bit darker edge to Mudd, I thought, tonight.
Yeah, for me, this is, I think Ella and I talked about this last week, but I just like the show more and more every episode. And I think like this is probably my new favorite episode because the table is set now. Like our table is fully set, and we're at that point where we can finally dive in and we can finally start getting, the show will never become fully episodic, but we can really get, sort of the week to week kind of goings on of the USS Discovery and its adventures. And so we finally get thrown into this. And as far as Mudd goes, I mean, I don't know how funny he's going to be, but he's certainly going to be a presence. He's supposed to be in 9 of these. And there are 8 episodes left, so he's going to be.
I was surprised he didn't come back to the ship with the cat. I was surprised the writers didn't bring him back to the ship. I thought for sure that's how we were going to have him in most of the episodes.
Yeah, me as well. And of course, it's a tease. He will be coming back. I also and I never made this connection before, but so they've introduced, and we can talk about the Spore Drive and the Spore Hub technology, but they've introduced this. Apparently fictional fungus, the Stella Viatoris, and I never made the connection that Mudd's wife is named Stella, so I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if there is something to that.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't picked up on that.
I figured they
Yeah,
named,
that's funny. Me neither.
yeah, I figured they named it. They gave it that name because Stella Viatoris is like a star traveler or passer in Latin. So you've got that going on. And let's just dive right into it. Let's talk about the mycelial network and the Spore Hub drive. What do you think about this technology in the Star Trek universe, Alan?
So I think it's intriguing.
We get a little more background on it this week, which...
Yeah, we dive a little bit more into it. There's that scene where, Tilly and Michael are there with Mark from Rent, Stan Metz. And we get a little bit deeper into what it is and how it works. I like this because I like the different direction it has taken the show. My guess is that, of course, this isn't how all the ships of the future work. We know this as Star Trek fans. So, my guess was first that there was going to be a problem with Ripper. I like to call him Tardy.
Yeah, there you go.
With our tardigrade. But then we seem to maybe have solved that. We're going to maybe turn a human being into the vessel for this. But there has to be some cost to this, and there has to be something waiting in the wings that's going to make this not work. We still don't know exactly where Ripper came from, right? Like we know he was on the other ship, the Glenn, but we don't know where the Glenn got him. Yeah. And there's kind of this implication that he was maybe always on board the ship or something.
Yeah, I thought the implication, because at the end when they shoot him off into space, is that, and apparently he has the ability to, of his own free will, and apparently he has will because he's sentient, travel this network. Maybe he just is a spacefaring creature who found the Glen because there was a concentration of spores there.
Oh, I get it. Yes, right.
Yeah, so I thought he jumped in himself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he's like a hitchhiker, like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right,
he just jumps into the hold, with the Volgons. So, I get that. So, no, I'm intrigued. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, the one that tells us why every ship in the fleet cannot be equipped with this.
Yeah, me too. And I also like the fact that it's clear. I still think it's a wacky idea, but it's clear that it's in service to a particular story and something they're trying to tell. And I think that that's neat. Although subspace is basically the force of Star Trek, isn't it? Like it's something they introduced that there's subspace spores, and it's like that sounds kind of like midichlorians to me. Like
or like the Speed Force from Flash. I mean, it's this magical place where you can park anything you need to or pull whatever you need out of it. Yeah,
right. Well, we see a little more this week. We see a really cool starbase where Lorca begins the show talking to some other personnel in Starfleet. Yeah. We see another Vulcan, and he talks again to this Admiral Katrina. I still can't remember her last name. It's Cornwall or Cornwell, something like that. Yeah. And we get the idea or the implication that he's a loose cannon, and we knew that. We knew that about Lorca, but even his superiors are not too sure about him. And it looks like they're ready to roll out this technology. This isn't something that is, it was developed in secret, but they're ready to go with this thing.
And we get a Kelvinverse shout out in that scene. She says, we already sent the plans to Jefferson, Iowa.
Right.
To build them, which is, the very first of the Kelvinverse movies. We see Kirk sitting on his motorcycle watching them build the Enterprise, in Iowa. Right. So they're doubling down on us building spaceships in Iowa.
Yeah, which is absolutely a Kelvinverse thing. Although let's talk about continuity because there's a couple continuity tweaks throughout the entire episode. There's that very very fan baity scene where
list the captains.
Yeah, they list the captains. And first of all, I was just, okay, yeah, I know all those names. But then I was trying to rack my brain and go, okay, so does this mean Kelvin or does it mean normal universe? Because we've got April and Pike, which are never really referenced in Kelvin, but that says to us, okay, they've never mentioned it, but the Enterprise is out there somewhere. Yeah. And then they mentioned Matthew Decker, who I don't believe has ever been mentioned in the Kelvinverse, but he is probably a Commodore at this point if we're going by the regular timeline. So they're definitely saying, hey, fans, we've got your backs. Check this out.
Yeah, I also like how they ranked them. And it's totally baiting
who's the best?
What do you think of this ranking, huh? Yeah.
And
sticking around Georgiou in there really, not too ugly.
A latecomer, but with a bullet, right. Yeah. And they
no
mentioned
no Lorca, by the way.
No, he's not on there, not at all. And they mentioned specifically eugenics experiments and how they are illegal.
Yeah.
But that hasn't stopped them from doing what they're doing on the Discovery.
We got a Daystrom Institute shout out.
Yeah.
That was a brief one. I was listening for other things. I think those are the only other Trek references that I caught from other versions of Trek.
Ella, did you see any particular shout outs?
Not other than what you guys have already mentioned, honestly. I tend to miss them, honestly, though, because I'm so distracted by the entire thing.
Yeah. So those are all things that are kind of in keeping for Trek, references and callbacks to earlier things. We have something in this episode that's kind of a first for Trek, and it's Star Trek's first F words.
Yes, twice in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to call her Cadet Potty Mouth now. That's my new name for her. Which is like, I mean, it's on a streaming service. There's no FCC. They can do whatever they want. But what do you guys think about pushing the envelope in terms of adult content on the new show?
Ella, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, Ella, do you want to take it?
Sure. I liked it from Tilly kind of a lot, actually, because she's still a cadet. And I imagine if I were a cadet and I was in that position, that's exactly what I would say. I feel like she's really blown away by what she's getting to do, and that's super cool because that would be, all of us.
Right.
Yeah. I think we had, I don't know if you want me to censor myself, but I think we had profanity in an earlier episode too.
Yes.
With shooting the thing coming through the door.
Yes.
I think it's when they were first capturing Ripper. I think, she says the S word. I think Michael does. But I have a little bit of a problem with it, only in the sense that I feel like that Trek is a family show, and actually we're going to talk. I'm referencing now a conversation you had on the regular, your original series, if you will,
right.
Enterprising Individuals, where you were talking about why the constant play to kids on Star Trek. Why the constant shows with the characters and that sort of thing. And I really do believe that they've always intended it's not a kids show. It's always intended to be a show for adults, but I do believe that they know they have a large kid audience.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I feel like they just don't need it. When I write books for kids, I deliberately don't use language. Look, if I'm writing about World War II, I mean, these soldiers would have been cursing up a blue streak, right?
Oh,
I mean, there's a reason we call it curse like a sailor.
Yeah.
So like in reality, people would be cursing all the time. I curse all the time. My daughter, who's 15, curses all the time, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But when I'm writing books for kids, I know that not every kid that's not cool with every family. And so to gain the widest readership possible, I avoid that. Yeah. And I feel like to gain the largest viewership possible, Star Trek has always sort of appealed to multiple generations. And yeah, it is on a streaming service. They totally can do it. There's nothing that says that they can't. But I just feel like they don't have to. I felt like in this case it was really gratuitous. Let's do it.
Yeah, where they're sort of, they're testing out what they can do, or they're sort of feeling their oats. Yeah. Well, coming from somebody who writes for different age levels or for a wide range of them, I think that has a lot of weight. And I kind of agree. Although, like Ella said, I'd probably be doing the same thing. In that situation.
I know, right? No, if it was me, I'd be cursing constantly if I was on the Discovery.
Yeah, it's funny too because they are, they live in the future. They are more refined, they are 23rd century human beings, and they're also disciplined. And so, like in the original series, I think there's one episode where City on the Edge of Forever, where Kirk says, "Let's get the hell out of here," and that's pretty much like the only any kind of curse in the original Trek. So I mean, we've come a long way, baby.
Yeah. Well, we came a lot further at the end of this episode. We get our first gay couple on a series of Star Trek. So I mean, on a TV series,
right?
So good for Trek, and we have come a long way to end up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I guess we get a couple F-bombs and we get a gay couple all in one episode. We're going to just go.
I'll take it. Yeah. And it's you mentioned Mark from Rent before. It's a Rent reunion of sorts. Because
right.
Actor Wilson Cruz, who plays Dr. Culbert, did play Angel in Rent on Broadway. Although I don't think they ever were in the show at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, and there are some interesting developments as far as what's going on with Lieutenant Stamets, because he puts himself in the machine, which I think we all kind of saw coming.
Yeah.
But none of us could, of course, guess at what the ramifications might be. And I still don't know what they are. Like, what was that? What was going on with the man in the mirror?
Yeah. My daughter.
Pretty unsettled.
Unsettling.
Right?
Yes.
Freaked out.
Yeah. I was watching this with my wife and daughter. My daughter's 15. And so one thing that you guys haven't mentioned in Discoverage so far, and I'm surprised because it feels like it feels like they're totally doing it on purpose, is the fungal corridor is the upside down. I mean, like, this is totally Star Trek meets Stranger Things. And like, we've got this other world that we pass through. We've got creatures who inhabit it. We've got, and then at this moment at the end, my daughter's like, he's going to barf a slug. He's going to barf a slug.
Okay, sure.
Like, she's been rewatching Stranger Things. She's ready for the new series. And she's like, he's totally going to barf a slug. And then he didn't. But then we see that weird mirror thing and she's like, called it. I mean, like, and I still have to give her credit for that. She saw the weird moment coming. And because it's totally Stranger Things-ish, if you will.
Barf the slug is the new save the cat moment. I think. If you're gonna barf, I know he's gonna barf the slug. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, hopefully it's not the new jump the shark. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. We have not talked yet about Captain Lorca and what he goes through in this episode, and he goes through a lot. Also, we meet a new character in Shazad Latif's Lieutenant Tyler.
Who I guess is going to become a regular now. Is that right?
Yes. I like the fact that they didn't feel the need to, just start with all the characters involved, and they're sort of accruing people as they go. And as Ella and I learned last week, they're also willing to say goodbye to people,
right?
At a moment's notice.
And as soon as I saw this guy, I'm like, maybe this is our replacement security officer.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. He also, I don't trust him, and it's And
there's something fishy.
There is, and they do that. I think if this was an original series thing, he would come in, he'd be all happy and smiley, and then he would turn on us. And since we are now all smarter viewers than we were in the 60s, they give you a little bit where it's like, oh, I don't think I can trust him. Oh no, it turns out that wasn't a big deal. But that's going to hide like the bigger thing that we can't trust him about later.
Right.
What do you guys think about that?
I think that he's very much a character, like going back to World War II and writing about World War II as I do.
Yeah.
There were people who were collaborators or people who were seen as collaborators, like especially in concentration camps. There were Jewish women who were pulled out by the German officers, and they were given food and they were given better treatment in return for not exactly a tit for tat, but it was sorry, no pun intended. But they would have sex with these women and then treat them really well. But the Jewish prisoners viewed them, they're like, hey, you're collaborating. And the women were like, what else am I supposed to do? And they're like, well, you fight, you claw, you have them kill you instead of you relenting. It was a really contentious thing.
Yeah.
And they flip it by having it be a guy who's being, sexually abused by a Klingon woman.
Yeah.
But it felt very much the same kind of situation to me where, Lorca calls him out. He's like, you've been here for 6 months and there's not a scratch on you. You're a collaborator.
Right.
And then he admits why he's like that. But it's still, there's the open question of, has he been accepting that to get the preferential treatment, or has he really bristled at it? He certainly is able to stand up really quickly and fight her when she comes along in the hallway. He wasn't able to hobble along with Lorca, but as soon as she shows up, he's up and ready to karate fight.
Yeah, he's ready to fight her. Yeah. Right. And Lorca and he make short work of the guards in that scene where they come back to have them choose their pain again. And it's nice to see some old-fashioned Trek foo in action.
That's right.
Yeah, with the double hand punch. Although I gotta say, if you're the Klingons and you're going to ritualistically torture your prisoners, maybe don't use the same 4 wrestling moves every time, because they're going to get the pattern down eventually, and then they'll be able.
He telegraphs he telegraphs the head kick. He looks away,
right,
and they're like, "Okay, 3, 2, 1, roll." You know, and it's
right.
Like, I think at that point I could have rolled out of that one.
Yes. Well, we've been talking about Lorca, the new characters. There's a character that we haven't focused on yet, Michael Burnham, who is in this episode, of course. And
barely.
And before we start to talk about her proper, I just wanted to point out the fact that for a character that this entire series sort of revolves around, I think it's refreshing that the series can step back from following her specifically,
right,
and we have a strong enough cast of characters that we can follow the other characters and rejoice in their triumphs and cry with them in their defeats.
Yeah.
I
thought they were really setting this up to be a Lorca episode right from the start. I mean, he gets captured, he's taken prisoner. We're going to see how he handles being tortured and being under stress outside of we're in a situation where he has no control.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was Star Trek's always been about its captains, and I love that this series is about Michael. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
But at some point, they were going to have to give us a Lorca episode where it focuses on him. I think.
Yeah.
Because the captains are so central to Star Trek.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen episodes like this before where, the captain or a crew member is kidnapped, and then it sort of focuses on them as they're being broken down and tortured.
Right.
And we get a reference, we get 3 lights, it's not quite 4. But the episode doesn't really go there. I mean, we get some insight into Captain Lorca, but we don't really crack that nut. Like, he pretty handily sort of extricates himself from his situation and just kind of does his badass thing. And I'm not disappointed by that, but I think the show's not ready to give up all the secrets on Lorca just yet.
Right. We didn't have our Firefly moment with Mal, being tortured. Yes. We didn't have. I mean, it felt actually very Han Solo. I mean, he comes back blinded, thrown into a room with lights, and I was seeing Bespin all over again, and and it was done as lightly as that was. We get the in Empire we get Han going ow 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 ow, and then we come back and he's blind, and we didn't get much more than ow 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 and a commercial break, which is fine. I actually really don't like torture scenes, especially in TV shows. I feel like torture scenes are an easy or like a cop out for writers. They can torture the information out of somebody, and that's how they can get the clue they need to move on forward.
Sure.
And it unfortunately, I think, perpetuates a real fallacy, and that is that torture is an effective way of getting information out of people. But we see it in cop shows, and we see it in science fiction shows like this. So I was kind of glad that we didn't have much, and I actually wondered. So I've got 2 theories about his vision problems.
Sure.
One of them being that they totally gave him the light sensitivity. Well, I guess three then. The one of them is that they gave him the light sensitivity, though, for this episode. That knowing that he was going to be caught and tortured at some point, giving him a light sensitivity gives them a way to torture him without sticking knives in him.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, if you're really thinking for a long way ahead, this is giving them a lot of credit. But the writers, but if you're really thinking very far ahead, you could give him this disability, this handicap, whatever you want to call it, this sensitivity, knowing that later on you could use that against him. Yeah. The other 2 things are, of course, that it lets them keep the lights low and look cool,
which they call out. They totally call out.
Yeah, but I think they really lampshade that right from the start. Like, I like to keep the lights down. Or my crackpot theory, as I know you like from enterprising individuals, is that maybe he walks in with Ripper the very first time with Michael and says, "This thing and I share a light sensitivity," and I'm like, when 2 things share a common thing, then often they're from the same place or connected to the same thing.
Oh, man.
And well, we're told that he bugs out of that ship and that everybody else dies. Did he? I don't know. Is Does he have some connection to? This is really crackpot theory.
He's next level tardigrade, is what you're saying.
Like they're both light sensitive.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's it could be a coincidence, but maybe it's not.
Well, apparently it's revealed in this. Well, it's not apparent. It is revealed in this episode that they suspect that the tardigrade is sentient. Which it's one thing to make a really big tardigrade, but it's like a dog I could see, but a dog's not really sentient. And so they do the scene, at the end where he's all hurt. And they give him the spores, and then they kind of do that scene that you see in every dog movie where they got to get rid of the dog because the uncle or evil stepmother's going to kill it. So the kid's like, "Get out of here,
go be free."
I
didn't never love you.
The white fang moment.
So of course that thing's coming back for sure. Maybe you're right. Maybe if they had tortured him some more, he would have curled up in a ball, and then they'd have to pour
all the water would have sucked out of him. I mean,
if they pour fortune cookies on him, he'll come back. I still want to know how
it's a crackpot theory, not my best theory.
It's not bad. I like that one though.
Yeah,
I'm still wondering how the fortune cookie thing's going to come back around, just from a writer's
I know, right? Or maybe it's just a one-time gag, but I don't know.
I hope not.
I know.
The other thing about Lorca this episode, is that I think they're still trying to show us how different he is from any other captain we've had. Do you think any other captain would have left mud on the Klingon prison ship?
Right. No matter how bad Mud is.
Yeah.
I can't think of another one who would leave him behind.
And I think that every captain that we know that's headlined a show before this would have been, take me. Instead of sending Tyler off, it would have been Picard would have stepped in and
totally
been
points at the other guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, who does that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, of course it was a setup, but we don't really know that. Yeah. It's he's a mystery, Mr. Lorca, as is the actor who plays him, Jason Isaacs. But back to get her done. Back to Michael.
I do just a couple more things. Just overall,
sure.
You guys haven't talked about it, but he has a standing desk in his room.
Yes,
which is, look, I'm all about the standing desk. I think it's a great way to not sit on your can all day. Right. But it's just really strange. And they even had that scene, I think, in tonight's episode. I did watch them all back to back, so they run together for me. Right. But I think in tonight's episode, where Michael comes to talk to Saru and tell him about that Tardy is having issues, and they're standing behind it together, right. And there's no Picard sitting behind his desk with somebody sitting in front of it, having a meeting. It really changes the dynamic of those conversations.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. I think it's a really interesting decision to have the desk, but to have no chair in the room.
Yeah, I'd like to see Riker get his foot up on that.
I know, right? He would. He would totally mount that desk.
That would be really tough. So Burnham and Saru have they have a conflict, and then they have kind of a reconciliation of sorts near the end of the episode. And I was wondering about you guys' opinion of how that relationship is sort of developing. We also find out that, we knew that it was kind of about Captain Giorgio, but it really gets underlined that that's really the source of his resentment for her. Ella, did you think that played well, that came off well?
Yeah. So the thing about, I was actually thinking about this during the episode about how complicated their relationship is. And I really love how they're kind of colleagues and they're sort of friends, but more in the way that they've known each other for a long time and that they have this mutual admiration for Giorgio.
Yeah.
But something that influences me when I'm watching is that I've already read the first Discovery novel, Desperate Hours by David Mack.
Sure.
And there's a lot of solo Saru scenes in there where you really get into his head. And so there's a lot more backstory in there about his jealousy and how visceral his feelings are about it. He's really hurt.
Wow.
But I'm really looking forward to their relationship progressing, especially now that Burnham has given him the telescope. That was so touching.
Yeah. That was a really nice moment.
Yeah, I think so. I think that what the whole, at least first season, if not the whole series, but I'm guessing maybe the first season. My guess about what the whole first season is really truly about is Michael's progression from a person who was more like Lorca at the beginning to a person who's more like Georgiou at the end.
Okay.
And like they've already dropped in a couple of different episodes, like people telling her this over and over again. There are conflicting theories. We're told over and over again that Lorca uses people to his advantage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen examples of it. And we saw him walk away from mud today, and we saw him, there the guy says, leave me, I'm dragging you. And he's like, okay, see ya. Like he says, I'll be back. And he does come back, but he leaves the dude, and like this is a guy who, and he tells us, he confesses to us that he blew up his entire ship full of people so they wouldn't fall into Klingon hands. I mean, that's hardcore. And then Georgiou tells Michael in her farewell message to her, that she hopes that she learns to care for the people in her care.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And my feeling is that they're setting this up for Michael's journey to be learning that lesson. And I feel like by the end of the first season, she has to win over every single person on board Discovery. And that the hardest person to win over, to get back to your original question, is Saru. That's the deepest problem that she had, the deepest rift that she has with anybody on that ship, because they had, as Ella says, this long time together on board the Shenzhou, that and this jealousy that he felt that really had nothing to do with her. Like then she goes and gets Georgiou killed, and or doesn't protect her or whatever. He still blames her. Yeah. And she committed mutiny, which she definitely did.
Yeah.
So he had this deep-seated resentment already, apparently, from the novel that Ella read, and also now this extra reason to hate her. And so I think that the biggest repairing is going to be between the two of them throughout the series.
Yeah, I hope so. And that seems to start in this episode.
Yeah. I don't think it's fixed, though. It shouldn't be.
No, it's not yet. No, for sure. Although the telescope goes a long way.
Yeah.
So, Ella, that's a vote in your favor for Desperate Measures, then.
Desperate Hours, yeah.
Or sorry, Desperate Hours, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I was holding back tears for like a solid like 1/3 of it.
All right. Well, good. Dayton Ward is writing the second one, Drastic Measures, which should be out sometime next year, and apparently is going to feature Tarsus 4 around the time of the Kodos the Executioner sort of incident.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see. Once again, Kelvin or Real Timeline, they seem to keep us on edge, but we'll see how that works out. As we wrap up here, did you guys have any final thoughts, anything that we didn't cover about the episode that you want to get out?
I thought with the previous week's episode, we got the Klingons. We got a lot more storyline from the Klingons last week. We only saw the Klingons as the bad guys this time, and not them. Their machinations behind the scene. I thought we might be able to. I was interested in these Klingon matriarchs. I think we're going to get like a Klingon Bene Gesserit. Yeah, and I don't know if Vok is our Kwisatz or not, but or what if he's going to have to stick his hand in a box or something.
Right.
But I was surprised that we didn't get that. I was actually kind of pleased. I haven't loved the Klingon side of things.
Okay.
Every time they cut away from the Discovery, I really can't wait for them to get back to the Discovery.
Okay. I'd like to see it developed on the Klingon side more as well. Although we already know that Vok is totally cool with having his hand burned, just as a Dune reference.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's right. Yeah, they pulled that out.
Ella, anything you wanted to say?
Well, we joked about it a little bit, but I'm still pretty distracted by like mere Lieutenant Stamets. Like, where are we going with that?
When they mentioned the mirror universe, you think this is what they were talking about?
Right.
I thought it was interesting that they mentioned an Andorian tonsillectomy, and it's guys, you can regrow kidneys. Do you really have to do tonsillectomies?
I know, right? And how many times are we going to hear about Andorians and Tellarites and Vulcans and not see any?
I know.
Let's see them. Come on. It's the core. It's like they're afraid to use the core races because they've been overused, but we never see them.
It's about time. And I love some of the new aliens, and I've actually started a new series on my website featuring some of the new aliens. But yeah, come on, let's bring those Andorians in.
Glimpses. Yeah, we got a couple more glimpses of the Captain America alien this time.
Yes.
The woman who's got the helmet and like because she's wearing a Starfleet uniform with the helmet, it totally looks like she's Captain America from the Marvel movies.
It does a little bit. And maybe Ella can tell us, is Commander Arium in the David Mack novel at all?
Commander
Arium. She's like the Captain America, like robot-looking character.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's mostly on the Shenzhou.
Right? Sure. Yeah.
Shenzhou.
Yeah.
So we have Daft Punk lady though.
Daft Punk lady.
Oh,
right.
good.
She's good.
Yeah, because Daft Punk lady was on that ship that went down. That's right.
Yeah, I don't think she made it.
Yeah, Ensign Goldblum didn't make it back this week, I noticed. We keep seeing all these other weird... There were a couple of blue aliens in the background in the cafeteria.
Yes.
One that had like Nicki Minaj hair going down the back.
Right.
So alien Nicki Minaj was at that table. But for all the blue, we haven't had an Andorian or a Bolian. So
that's true.
We got to get our classic blue guys in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, after losing Landry last week, and of course Ensign Daft Punk in the premiere, I think I have validated the worth of the segment where we check our threat ganglia. Who do you guys think is going to that big holodeck in the sky in future episodes?
Well, I got to guess. Ella, do you have one?
I guess it depends. I think maybe the new guy though.
Oh, the new guy?
Tyler?
Okay. Sure.
Maybe not right away, but
yeah. I think he's going to stick around. I'm guessing that it's either Mark from Rent or Mark from Rent's boyfriend or husband. I don't know if they're married, but I wonder if his partner will die because whatever Stamets has done is going to, the slug's going to come out at some point. Like this, he's going to barf up the slug and then it's goodbye partner. So I'm guessing, and he's not even the CMO, which I thought was really interesting. Did you catch that? Right? He's like, I'm going to go help the CMO do this tonsillectomy. I thought that was really cool too. That there's more than one doctor on the ship. Let's see a couple of them.
Sure.
But he's my next one. If I have to pick somebody in the pool, it's the young doctor.
I have to say that
makes me so afraid.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so worried about him now.
I think that seems very likely. There's a trope called women in refrigerators, where you kill an undeveloped character who is a significant other of a main character in order to give them motivation. And it's great that we can expand that to all genders, but at the same time,
that's right.
It does seem like they're kind of setting that up a little.
Yeah, we can make this an inclusive stereotype.
Yeah, right. Exactly. For all races and sexes.
Yeah, that's right. An inclusive trope, to borrow from your another podcast.
Exactly.
He's my guy in the pool. I'm taking him.
Okay, well, we'll set the odds on that one later. And that is pretty much it for our show this week. Thanks for joining us, listeners. If you like what you hear, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPod for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both this show, Star Trek Discoverage, and Enterprising Individuals, our other show, are released. And you can tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage. Also, when you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice, be it Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play, and subscribe to the show. Give us a rating and a review if you think that we deserve it, because that really helps us out. And if you really like the show, tell a friend. Join us next week when we talk about the 6th episode of Star Trek Discovery, Lethe. And no synopsis is currently available, which I found was interesting. And also, there is no next time on Star Trek Discovery for this episode. What do you guys think about that?
This might be something too spoilery.
Yeah, keeping it close to the vest for this one.
Yeah.
I guess we can tell that Lethe is traditionally, if you're classically educated, is the name of the underworld river in Greek mythology that causes forgetfulness in all who drink its waters. So read into that what you will. I know that we will on this show. Alan and Ella, I want to thank you for joining me on the show. It's been a delight.
Thank you. I've had a great time.
Yeah,
Ella,
thank you.
Ella, remind people where they can find you online.
You can find me at generationsgeek.com, at generationsgeek on Instagram, and later this week we'll have another episode up, which will be on the original Alien, so you can check that out.
Looking forward to that. Alan, where can people find you online?
I'm at Alan Gratz on Twitter. That's ALANGRATZ. I'm Alan Gratz on Facebook and www.alangratz.com.
Great. Well, thanks to both of you for joining me in the episode, and we are signing off. This is Caliban for Ella and Alan saying live long and prosper.